Hi, this is Braden Holtby.
This is Bob Stauffer from the Oilers Radio Network.
Hi, this is Brian Burke from Toronto, Ontario.
This is Daryl Sutter.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carly Agro from Sportsnet Central.
This is Jay Onright.
This is Quick Dick coming to you from Tofnell, Saskatchewan.
Hey, everybody. My name is Theo Fleury.
This is Kelly Rudy.
This is Corey Cross.
This is Wade Redden.
This is Jordan Tutu.
Hey, it's Ron McLean, Hockey Night in Canada and Rogers Hometown Hockey, and welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. Happy Hump Day. This is the final episode of the SNP summer tour, the summer road trip we took here this past week. Man, it just, time flies, and had a blast doing it. And before we get on to today's guests, obviously we got to get to our sponsors, and these three companies stepped up huge to help make it a success. And it starts with Foremost, Lewis Stang, Mike Strelchuk over there. Well, I've told the story, but without me sitting and talking to Lewis, this doesn't come to fruition. And a huge shout out to the boys over there. They've been a big part of this, and they offer smooth wall grain bins, hopper bottoms, fuel tanks. They're in stock and manufactured locally. They want to ensure you know they're constructed the highest quality and engineered for a long life. Delivery is free within 300 kilometers of Lloydminster. You can buy at any of their co-op locations, Lloydminster, Lashburn, or Neilburg. For more information, you can check them out on their website, foremost.ca. Really do appreciate them hopping aboard on this and being the first company to do it. They always support local, and a huge shout out once again to Foremost. Baker Hughes Upstream Chemicals. When you need to improve performance or productivity, your solution often exists in the proper application of specialty chemicals. We offer multiple chemical lines to improve performance, use, and production. Not to mention we have the best group of guys around. Shout out to all the boys. And we'll go above and beyond to ensure you get what you need and answers to all your questions. For all your oil field chemical needs, look to Baker Hughes. Once again, here's a group, a company that I work for full-time, and on the side, the after hours I'm doing this, and they've been immensely supportive just every day, all the boys. Appreciate everybody, supporting it and having some laughs and following along, and I always go back to a guy like Paul Bissonnette, who everybody knows, Biz Nasty from Spittin' Chicklets. Without Mr. Mullet, I don't want to get his head too big, but without Mr. Mullet pushing me, I would have never got him. And that has been kind of a theme with a lot of the people that listen to this podcast. They put out a name, and if we push it, you just never know where it goes, and we've been able to attract a lot of good people. So for the guys over at Baker Hughes, really appreciate the support. And if you're looking for oil field chemicals, give me a call. Give Baker Hughes a call. We'll get you hooked up. Finally, under Tracy Klotz's direction, Titus Tools is a locally owned business. He formed in 1997. He's got 40 years experience in the oil industry, and he's a guy that reached out, wanted to help, enjoyed what I've been doing, and so he reached out and heard, about the road trip, wanted to get involved. I walk around his office and have seen, the Andrew Mavridis have talked a lot about that, or on the walls a bunch of Brandy Hofer's paintings, and you just see that he bleeds Lloydminster, bleeds community talent. And so a huge shout out to Tracy and his team over at Titus Tools for hopping on this and helping make this happen. If you're interested in finding anything more out about Titus Tools, make sure you head over to TitusTools.com. And if you're heading into any of these businesses, please let them know you heard about them on here. It helps them know people are listening. It helps me. All right. If you're interested in advertising on the show, visit SeanNewmanPodcast.com. In the top right corner, hit the contact button, and send me your information. Put in a little blurb what you're looking for, or if you got an idea. We got lots of different options, and I want to find something that can work for the both of us. Now, let's get on to your T-Bar 1 tale of the tape. Originally from Luseland, Saskatchewan, he was born in 1928, making him 91 years young. In 1961, he opened his first car dealership. Fast forward to today, and he didn't miss a single day of work due to COVID-19. He doesn't drink, swear, and loves classic cars. Has been married to his wife Mary for 69 years. The Jim Pattison Group owns, get this, 25 car dealerships, Overwadi Foods, Save On Foods, Quality Foods, Ripley's Believe It or Not, Guinness World Records, 43 radio stations and 3 TV stations, not to mention Pattison Agriculture at 19 locations. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. On May 30th, 2017, Pattison and the Jim Pattison Foundation announced they were donating $50 million to the largest private donation in Saskatchewan history to the new Children's Hospital of Saskatchewan in Saskatoon. The man is extremely successful and extremely humble. I am talking about Mr. Jim Pattison. So buckle up. Here we go.
My name is Jim Pattison, and welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast.
First off, welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast. Thank you for joining me, sir. It is an absolute honor.
Well, thank you. Thanks for coming out. We're always glad to see people from Saskatchewan come out to see us. So,
well, I did the Mr. Pattison thing, and we drove. I believe that's something you do.
Yeah, I do. When I go to Saskatchewan, I prefer to drive because you can go to all the small towns, which is much easier by car or truck than it is by airplane.
Do you have a fear of flying? Or are you
No,
not at all?
No, we fly all the time.
You know, sitting here looking out over this beautiful view, when I first came in, I thought, gee, it's going to be interesting to go back to the humble beginning, because I've read your story. It comes from humble beginnings. I thought maybe we could start there and talk a little bit about growing up in Saskatchewan. I mean, it was very brief. You moved out here at a young age, but do you have any memories of Saskatchewan growing up?
I got a lot of memories because my parents sent me back to work on the homestead out of Major, Saskatchewan, which is where my mother came from. And so I went back there every year and worked on the farm because my parents didn't think they thought that unless you worked on a farm and understood how the world works, that you never amount to anything. So anyway, I went back in the early days, year after year, and worked in the family farm in Major, Saskatchewan.
How did you get back there back then? Did you
Train
by yourself?
Many times by myself.
So
Once in a while, my dad would drive me back.
how old would you have been when they were sending you back?
Well, I was. My first recollection would be, 12, 13, something like that.
Times have certainly changed then. Lots of people wouldn't send a 12 or 13-year-old back on a train by themselves.
As I said, my dad drive me back or go on a train, but they had good confidence in me, and I was reliable, so it worked out okay.
What lessons did working on the farm back then teach you?
Well, I'll tell you, I learned about milking cows. There was no machines in those days. But anyway, I learned to ride a horse. I used to go get the mail when the train came in once a week. I'd get on the horse and go to town, get the mail. And so anyway, I learned certainly a lot about the real world and farming from my parents and my uncle and who was running the old homestead.
You're born in 28, and World War II rages on from the 40s, 40 to 39 to roughly 45. Do you have any memories of those years?
Oh, I certainly do. The war years was we used to listen to Churchill from England on short wave first thing in the morning when we got up. I can still take you to the house here in Vancouver. We paid $25 a month rent furnished. And the first thing in the morning, we get up and listen to the news, from England of what was happening. And I always remember Winston Churchill speaking often in the mornings, and that was Vancouver time. And we were certainly, and of course I joined the cadets and was getting ready to go into the Army. The time I got out in 1945, I was in training to go into the Army.
You were in training to go?
Well, I mean, not by the Army, but in school, grade 11, grade 12, I was in the band, because I was going to go into the band when I went into the Army, because I was running a high school band, and we all had Army uniforms and stuff like that.
Were those nervous times?
No, I don't think so. The war was serious business, but when you're a teenager, you always are optimistic. At least I found most of the people I dealt with were.
It's slowly the stories of those years are slowly or maybe quickly fading away. So I find it very interesting to hear a person talk about those years, because you got to see things firsthand. And
oh yeah, no, but we had my dad would go on go out door to door and raise money, for war savings bonds, and they had campaigns, and they'd have teams of people to go out and sell victory bonds, is what we called them. And I was going to school, but I remember my dad, it wasn't a full-time job, but he had a full-time job. But in addition to that, he'd go out and sell victory bonds door to door.
When did you first start your career in sales?
Oh, heck, I started when I was probably 7, going door to door selling garden seeds, flower seeds, garden seeds door to door. And then I got a job after that selling the Saturday Evening Post door to door, subscriptions.
Yeah.
Ladies' Home Journal. And then after that, I got a paper route. And I've worked all my life, actually.
Was it something out of necessity you started selling and you were just good at it, or was it something you witnessed and were
Well, I knew if I wanted a bike, I was going to have to make money to buy a bike.
Yeah.
Or as time went by, but we didn't have a lot of money. We didn't own a house or anything like that. But anyway, I used to sell garden seeds door to door, and then we got into the magazine subscriptions. Then I had a newspaper route. Then I worked delivering groceries for a Chinese grocer at just between 26th and 25th on Main Street, and so I've always worked as far as I can recall, and I always liked what I did.
Is this COVID-19 slowdown when everything locked up? I assume you were stuck at home for a little bit, probably for the first time.
I've never been home. I've been to work every day.
Every day?
Every day, never missed a day.
Really?
No.
Doesn't concern you then?
No. Well, it concerns us.
I mean, it concerns you,
but it doesn't stop me coming to work.
Interesting.
So,
I've found in reading about you and watching different things, I find your leadership style very, I would think, easy to follow, because you lead by example at all times.
Well, if you like what you do, it's not hard to do. I like what I do, so I don't really consider it work.
That's why at 91 you're still going.
You're right. I still am, thank the good Lord. My health is good, so I'm very grateful for that.
You've never hit a point where you touch on it, I guess, that it's fun. And most people, I suppose, don't have a job they view the same way. But you've never hit a point where lots of people at 55, 60, 65 hit a point where they're just like, you know what? I think I want to go this way instead.
Well, I've never crossed that road. I've always, of course, when I got into business, I always had debt, so I needed to go to work because I got to pay my bills, so I'm still doing that. We still owe the banks money, so I'm still going to work to make sure we can make our payments,
How about Mary? You've been married for 69 years?
Yeah, I've been married. Got married in I got married in 51. So I've been married, there it is, 69 years. I've been married 69 years, and I'm still married, and same wife, and we've had a good life.
What, you talked before we started, I must have picked a good one to move her from Minneapolis out to Hillmont, Saskatchewan. How did you and Mary meet?
Met at a children's camp in Swift Current. It was an apostolic church camp, which is an organization in Saskatchewan, a church organization. It was mostly in Saskatchewan at that time, Manitoba and Alberta. There was a couple of churches out here. But anyway, I met at a children's camp at 13, where her parents sent her and her sister to a children's camp in Swift Current. I think it was called 17 Mile Bridge. It was a camp 17 miles out of Swift Current, and so I met my wife there when we were 13, and kept in touch all those years.
You living in Vancouver and her living out in Moose Jaw.
Right.
What was it at 13 and moving forward that you just knew?
Well, you didn't. I mean, we met then and we corresponded, and then later on, 3 or 4 years later, I went down playing my trumpet at church camps in the summer, along with another fellow that was a really good violin player, and he and I went to these different camps playing our instruments, and so I saw her again there, and we wrote letters back and forth occasionally, and so eventually that all turned out okay.
Did you date her then? Or
no, I just kept in touch with her. They didn't date anybody at that age. I kept in touch, and I know I got stranded and I was up in Nipawin, and I ran out of money, and I had this car, and so I phoned my wife and told her I was broke, and she talked to her father and sent me some money, like $20 or something, to get some gas so I could move forward until I could get some more money. So anyway, she kept me alive there for a few days.
What were you doing in Nipawin?
Oh, I was playing my trumpet. There's two of us at church camps and stuff up in Nipawin at the Apostolic Church up there.
And you got stranded playing the trumpet? You were paying your way then?
Yeah, we paid our way, and this other guy and I played at these different church camps, and they would help us along from time to time. So did that one summer.
What did your future father-in-law think of having to fork over some cash?
I never discussed it with him, and all I know is that she sent the money and kept gas in the car for this other guy, Vern McClellan, who was really a top-notch musician. And so anyway, we got along fine.
She flies to Vancouver and you propose along those lines, correct?
That's correct. Well, yes, I did. That was later on. That was when she'd probably be 21 or 22, something like that.
So you guys, up until 21, 22, when she flies to Vancouver, you're keeping in correspondence with the odd letter?
Yeah, we corresponded. I saw her once or twice. She and her mother and her sister came to Vancouver once or twice, and I saw her when she came out here. But we didn't keep in touch on a regular basis, face to face or anything, and we didn't write consistently. So, but we got along fine when we met, so it worked out okay.
The reason I keep digging on it is I just think today's standard, you date someone and you date them for a extended period of time. You might even want to move in with them and kind of get the lay of the land, understand that you can, this is a person I want to spend, and, and sometimes that doesn't even work.
But things were very different then. This was, this is what, 60, 70 years ago now.
That's what fascinates it about me. She flies out and you've been corresponding.
Well, I've been corresponding, and I asked her to come out, and so she came out, and so anyway, I decided I heard she was going to get engaged to somebody, so I heard that. So I always liked her, but I hadn't been in touch with her for a couple of years. So anyway, it all worked out okay.
You heard she was getting engaged out in Vancouver?
Yeah, a friend of mine, the best man at my wedding, when we got married in Moose Jaw, told me he heard Mary was going to get engaged to somebody, and so I thought, well, I hadn't talked to her for a couple of years or so. So anyway, I phoned her up, and it all worked out fine.
Well, 69 years later, I guess so.
Yeah.
She's been along for quite the journey now.
Yeah. She was 92 in August. In August, yeah, just this month.
I want to go back to your cleaning cars on a train, and you quit on the spot and get stranded out in British Columbia. Does that ring a bell?
It certainly does. I got off the train at Lytton.
Lytton, that's right.
Yeah.
Why not just work a couple more days and get back home?
Well, because there was a big flood in 1948, and the highways, including the railways, were washed out. The bridges were washed out, and the railways, I was working as a pantryman on the dining car for CP rail, and they couldn't get, I was on the Vancouver Calgary run, and the train couldn't get back to Vancouver because the bridge got washed out, and they told us, the crew, that we were going to go run from Minneapolis to Moose Jaw for the rest of the summer. Oh. And I didn't want to do that, so I got off the train at Lytton on its way back to go work out of the prairies. And so I got off the train and eventually got back to Vancouver and got a job selling used cars.
Well, before you get to selling used cars, you've done something as a kid I've always wondered about. You hopped on a train in the middle of the night and laid flat down.
You're right.
I
was scared to death. It was a flat car on a train, a freight train, and it was going through Lytton, and the railway tracks going from Lytton to Kamloops. A lot of it's on the river, right by the river, and I was scared to death. I laid flat on my stomach with my hands and legs out, so I wouldn't roll off the flat car because the railway was right on the Thompson River.
Yeah,
and I was scared to death. But anyway, I got to Kamloops and eventually got home, and so that all worked out okay too.
As the trains roll by, I'm sure I'm not the only one that could say, man, I wonder what it would be like just to hop on one of those things and take it for a spin.
Well, the alternative was that I was on my way to Minneapolis, and I didn't want to do that. So,
what was the first car you? Well, actually, you start by being the wash bay guy, the lot kid.
Yeah, I did it. 7th and Cambie. That's all right. for Fred Richmond Motors. I applied for a job as a used car salesman, and Mr. Richmond said, I don't need a salesman. We only have one, and I'm happy with him. But what we need is a wash boy. And if you want to be a wash boy, I'll tell you what I'll do. He says, if you want to be a wash boy, I'll let you speak to a customer as long as Art Davenport, the one salesman we have, is not on the lot, or if he's out demonstrating a car and a customer comes on, I'll allow you to speak to the customer. Otherwise, you have to wash cars full time. I said, I'll take the job. And that's how I got started. And by golly, as it turned out, the first week, I'd managed to sell a car or two when Art Davenport, the one salesman, was off the lot. So then they offered me a job selling used cars full time, and that's how I got in the car business.
That's some pressure, right?
Well, anyway, it all worked. Thank the good Lord, it all turned out okay.
Well, I'm always interested in, back then, what did you do different? Did you do anything different than other people? Because I'm sure there was other.
No, everybody.
Everybody was grinding and trying to get.
Everybody, I don't know. Everybody, we all went to school. None of us families had what you call money. Everybody worked for a living, and there was not a lot of prosperity at that time in the world like there is today. And we didn't come. Everybody where I lived was a working class family. We all went to school and did our stuff. Everybody helped part-time or full-time, whatever job you could get.
And you became very, very, very good at selling cars.
I got a job selling used cars there, and then later on I sold cars on Kingsway where all the big used car dealers were, and I did well there. And then I sold cars when I went to UBC University. I bought and sold used cars and advertised it in the university paper or the classified ads in the Sun and Province. And I worked my way through school doing that.
Was that something other students were doing? That one is interesting to me.
I don't recall any people doing that, selling. But my dad sold cars in Saskatchewan and in Vancouver, and I liked cars, so it wasn't hard for me to do that.
Yet in college or university, you're spending a decent amount of money to get a car, to put it on.
Yeah, but I financed it. I bought a car, put the financing on it, drove it to UBC, advertised it, and sold it. And then I'd get another one. And that's what I did, and that's how I worked my way through school, buying and selling cars.
You know, you bring up advertising, and once again, in reading your book, if there's something that I was very impressed with is how much advertising you do. I know you own advertising companies, but in anything you did, you always advertised above and beyond.
It's what got us here today was advertising. What I was doing, which was selling used cars or new cars, and advertising was the basis of a lot of the good things that happened to me. It came through advertising, and I understood that you have to differentiate yourself by something to get people to respond to an ad. So, advertising has always been of interest to me over the years.
Well, you have in Lloydminster. I've stared at the Pattison name bar. Well, actually, wherever I go, and here it's interesting. Now that you're looking around and driving through Vancouver, you see it everywhere. But back home, it was just a name, right? He didn't really think much of it, and it's pretty impressive to me how far your name has gone. Like, you are worldwide.
Well, I don't think we are that respect, but we certainly we're leaders in the billboard business, and we have 27 or 8 car dealerships now. We got, I think in Western Canada we have 47 radio stations, and so we got we're in the advertising business.
And all those businesses you go and visit personally?
We meet with them on a regular basis, the management of all these, everything we're involved in, we try to meet with them. Well, we meet with them 5 times a year, and except for COVID, what we're going through now, and we're doing a lot of it through Zoom and stuff like that.
Yeah. How do you enjoy that? Would you rather...
I'd rather be face-to-face than Zoom, but Zoom is better than the telephone.
Absolutely. Can see the person.
Zoom is good compared to the alternative.
When did you decide, was that always something you wanted to do, was see all these different businesses? Or was that a conscious choice and a change?
No, it just came by one step at a time. My objective was to get to be a used car salesman, would be my original objective. And because I liked cars, and my dad was in the car business, and so anyway, cars. And then I got into advertising. From advertising, we got into radio, and radio we got into billboards and electric signs, and into cars and all the stuff we're into now.
Small steps almost. I mean, they're big steps, but...
No, but one step at a time.
Yeah,
but the difference was that I struck out into industries I didn't know anything about, like the food business. And then we got into other types of businesses that are very significant with us today.
I'm curious about that. What attracted you to things you had no clue about?
Maybe what we thought was undervalued. If we saw something that we thought was something that was undervalued, we'd buy it, then learn about it. As time went by, made a lot of mistakes over the years. My goodness, all the mistakes I made. Well, one that we've always tried to be honest. That's the main thing. What built our company was always being honest, tell the truth, and try to do the right thing,
Yeah, I respect that about you immensely. I think that's something you can easily get on board with.
Yeah, well, if you do the right thing, usually it pays off. There's no shortcut, usually.
In going after things you didn't know anything about, you must have to surround yourself with very good people, I assume.
Well, as time goes by, it's all people. The quality of the people is everything. As the company grows, it's all selection of quality people. That's the job. Number one job is the quality people that we work with.
So are you saying then, if you see a business and the business looks okay, the next step is the people, or is the first thing people and then view what their business is? Well, you got to understand, today, looking at a business is very different than it did 25 years ago. For example, we're much more interested in the environment. Businesses that are environmentally friendly are at the top of our list. 25 years ago, we never considered about things like the importance of the environment like we do today. And so as the world changes and as knowledge changes, we're obviously changing our priorities too. You strike me as a man who loves to learn.
Well, the world keeps changing, and if you don't keep changing with it, you won't be in business very long. That's one thing I've learned. As the world keeps things that used to be very good today aren't nearly as attractive as what's coming down the road next.
I want to ask about Maureen Chant. Chant?
Chant, C-H-N-T.
Chant.
Yes.
She's been with you. I was just talking to her, and without her, I don't think I get to you. And so, she's an exceptionally nice lady, but two, she's been working with you a very, very long time.
I think Maureen's been with me 57 years. I think we've been in business 59 years now. And Maureen's been with me 57. We started in a 3-pump gas station together. And I didn't hire her. A fellow that worked there hired her, and then she was in the parts department. Then she got into she became the night switchboard operator, then the day switchboard operator. Then she went to work in the service department, and then I put her in the advertising department. So she's been around the company a long time.
That's
and a big contributor to where we are today.
Well, I was going to say that, throughout your book, she comes up a lot. And in some interesting roles. I said to her walking in, I said, she might be the interviewer. Maybe I should have just stayed in her office. Because she's done some immensely important jobs for you over time.
She has, and she knows the company inside out over the years. And of course, as you said earlier, it's the quality of the people that make the company. And the bigger we get, the more important it is that we hire quality people. And Maureen has always been very much involved in helping decide who we have run our various divisions over the years.
Yeah, some trust with the quality that you build that.
And her judgment on people is very, very excellent, and so she's carved a role out here over the years, and her ability to judge the quality of the people that are new coming into the company. She's been a huge help to us and to me over these many years.
I want to talk about one of your, I don't know if you call it mistakes but the Vancouver Blazers. You're entering into the WHA. Yes. Well, You know me. I'm missing teeth. I'm a hockey player at heart. I find the WHA was before my time.
Yeah.
Would you enlighten me with some stories of owning a WHA franchise?
Yeah, well, it's a headache from day one, but it was two people that created that league. One was out of Winnipeg, and the other was Bill Hunter out of Edmonton. And those guys were really hockey guys. And anyway, they came to me and talked about getting in the hockey business, and there was a team that was of interest. And so anyway, and then Toronto, one of the Bassett fellows got into the business. They were a high-quality family in Toronto, and they got in the business. So anyway, bottom line is we thought we'd try it. And so we were got in the hockey business, and unsuccessful. We were in Vancouver for 2 years, then we moved the team to Calgary, and anyway, it was a good experience. It cost us some money, but we certainly learned a lot. In fact, at one time we owned the AAA baseball team here in Vancouver, and I sold it to Molson's, and so we've had a shot at the sports business. Very, very interesting, fun, but we were unable to make any serious money at it.
So you've never ventured back into?
We haven't. Once we sold the baseball team here, we haven't gone back into the sports business.
You wrote in your book that the WHA owners meetings were more entertaining than a nightclub.
Oh, absolutely. Going to one of those meetings with, they called them governors or what they called them. Anyway, it was the owners of these meetings. I mean, the best movie in town wouldn't be as good as going to those meetings, because these people were sports guys and they were dealing with money, and most of the league wasn't doing that well, and it was very entertaining and unprofitable.
Maybe what's one of the you say entertaining and what was one of the things that stuck out to you about an owners meeting back then?
Oh, heck, everything was about the league and how could you keep the teams in Cleveland alive, or San Diego, a WHA team, and of course the owners there were struggling for money, but you got to have, if you're going to have a league, you got to have teams, and the teams like Edmonton was doing fine, and other places were doing okay, but meantime you had to have other places, like Winnipeg did fine, but down in San Diego it was tough going to keep the team. So anyway, it was very interesting. I remember it very well. Met some great people, and it was fun but expensive.
You're an entertainer. You're a guy who is high energy, finds ways to motivate people, bring people in. In the WHA days, what did you do to try and attract people to come to a Vancouver's Blazers game or a Calgary Cowboys game? Was there?
Oh heck, we did what we did. Advertise with what we would normally do, but people, people liked hockey. We would, out here in Vancouver, my recollection, we averaged about 7,000 people a game, and the Canucks would be sold out at 15,000 or so a game, and but anyway, it was an education.
I read that you once almost bought the Toronto Maple Leafs. Is that true?
That is true. We actually had a written contract, and through the due diligence, we did not close the deal because the auditors discovered some things that we didn't think were something we wanted to buy.
Do you wish now you had a hockey franchise?
No, it was fine. We focused on other things.
You said you can't, sticking with sports, you said you can't envision a worse punishment than golfing. Is that still true?
Oh, well, golf, my gosh, it's got to be really maybe the most popular game out, but it was, you need time to play golf, and I just never had the time to take the time to play golf because of what I do every day. But boy, I have a lot of friends that are spend a lot of time golfing, and they're very successful at their business. They're successful at golf, but I preferred not to take the time, and because it is a time-consuming sport.
So what do you do with your time then? What's your hobby?
Oh, I don't know. My hobbies, it's probably music. In the most, like on our boat, we have a piano. We have 2 pianos on our boat. We have an organ on our boat. We have a keyboard on our boat, and we have. Over the years, I've used the boat a lot for entertaining.
Enjoy playing then?
Yeah, it's. I don't play well, but I.
I bet you play better than me.
No, well, I doubt I play better than anybody. But anyway, I play from time to time.
I read one of the things that caught me in your book, and this is going back a lot of years because I know it was published, I believe, in '87, and I was born in '86. So when I first got notice that I was going to have this opportunity, of course, I went online, found your book, read it. I know religion has played a huge part in your family. You had a part in there that talked about Oral Roberts and tent revivals. Does that ring a bell?
Yes, it does.
And I read about it, and essentially to the listener, you went and saw him heal people instantly in a tent, or relative. And you seem skeptical, or at least that's how the book reads. And so then in L.A., by chance, you see him, and you sit down with him, and you question him on it, and basically say, I don't believe you. And he invites you to one in L.A. And then you follow him he invites you out, you go with him to L.A., and you watch him again.
No, I was in Los Angeles on business, and I saw him in a restaurant having dinner early. It was 6 o'clock at night in the Statler Hotel, and I saw Oral Roberts. He'd had a campaign in Vancouver, and I had gone to his campaign here, and I was very skeptical of what he was talking about. So then here he was in the dining room all by himself, and so anyway, I went over to see him and introduced myself and said I'd been to his meetings in Vancouver, and he said, "What did you think?" And I said I was very skeptical. I was very honest with him, and so anyway, that's where I met him, and that's that.
So when you went and watched him the second time that night, though, out in L.A., you followed up with a family for about 6 months after.
Oh,
with two
longer
boys.
than that, maybe 3 or 4 years.
So where did you come down on that?
Well, I was very impressed. This was a meeting that he had in Los Angeles, and I saw this. He was a faith healer, and so when he invited me to come, I sat on the stage and with him, with about 40, 50 other ministers, and so when I saw this one particular family come up that had their children that were deaf and dumb. And then he prayed for them. I jumped off the stage and followed them out to see what it was all about, and came away with a very different opinion of him after following through.
So you believe it then?
I've met with the parents. I met with the uncle and the relatives, and these children were born deaf and dumb, twins, and so they could start to speak, and for the first time. And I met with some of the relatives that night, and then we followed them. Marina, I came home and told Marina about this, and so we checked on them for years. After that, they lived up in the northwestern part of the United States. Followed through, but I was very impressed with what I saw. It was a miracle.
So how did that change, like, to see a miracle like that? Did that change anything in your life?
No, I was always brought up in church and in the Pentecostal type faith, and they always talked about Jesus healing people and all of that. So anyway, I always had the Christian background all my life. My parents, who weren't initially had a lot of faith, but as time went by, they turned to faith in Saskatchewan. And then when they came out here, my dad worked in a Skid Road mission. And of course, not maybe 6 blocks from here, I can take you there, where my dad and mother worked 3 nights a week all the time I grew up. And I played my trumpet and played in the mission till I was 26 years old.
That's very, very interesting.
Oh, no, I was raised in a Skid Road mission, and when my dad died, and at the funeral, which I put on for my dad, the place was the church we had the funeral. You couldn't get a seat. It was sold out because it was all people from Skid Row that my dad's life had helped over the years in here in Vancouver. So I grew up in this Skid Row mission I went with my parents till I was 26. Then I got married to Mary, and from Moose Jaw, and we started our own family, so I switched to a church.
Before I get closer to the end here, I got to ask about Luseland, Saskatchewan. You've been out here a long time. What is it about Luseland that still holds a piece of your heart that you, the story I heard, the number one story I heard coming here was Marilyn Monroe's dress.
Marilyn Monroe dress. Marilyn Monroe dress, yeah. Well, I bought Marilyn Monroe's dress. It's the most expensive dress in the world. And we have it at Ripley's, believe it or not. They show it and use it. They have a lot of believe it or nots. And this is, believe it or not, this is the world's most expensive dress. And I bought it because I bought it for Ripley's, believe it or not.
But then brought it to Luseland, Saskatchewan, of all places.
Yeah, I did. That's exactly right. I brought it to Luseland, and then we took it to the Save-On store in Saskatchewan, and I think it went up. I'm not sure whether it went up to Prince Albert or not, but anyway, it's down in Orlando, Florida right now.
So what is it about Luseland, Saskatchewan that still holds a piece of you
Well,
all
it's
these
where
years
I
later?
was born. So when I was born, my mother went in from Luseland to the hospital in Saskatoon, but that's where we lived. My dad was a postmaster there, and my mother was a school teacher, and that's where they met, and that's where I was born. So I always have a soft spot for Luseland.
What's maybe one of the most influential people who's helped shape your life?
Would be my mother and father.
Yeah?
Certainly, my mother and dad would be a strong influence. Ronald Reagan was a person that I was fortunate enough to become a trustee of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation, and a lot of things that Ronald Reagan believed in and followed certainly stuck with me. He was certainly a special person, Ronald Reagan. And I was fortunate enough to be exposed to the things he believed in, and I'm still a trustee of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation in Los Angeles.
On May 2nd, 1986, is that the day the expo opens?
That was the day it started.
That's the day I was born. So
Is that right?
yes, I read that. I probably had to read that about 3 times. I went,
Okay.
wow, isn't that interesting? You've already lived a life, and I'm just starting
Okay,
mine.
boy, I remember that day as if it was yesterday. I spent 6 years working for the government, $1 a year, and I learned a lot about government, working with the BC government, the federal government, and a lot of other governments during that period.
Was that well, that had to have been that World Expo had to have been one of the biggest achievements, I assume, in your lifetime?
Well, it was one of the most educational opportunities I've ever had because I traveled literally a lot of the world and a lot of things. I met a lot of people through that, learned a lot about government. I spent 6 years, 3 years part-time, and then the last 3 years I didn't come into my own office here in Vancouver for 3 years. I worked down on the site. Maureen Chant, who we talked about earlier, came down every day with the business things that had to be dealt with. And but the last 3 years I worked full time at the fair or for art, because we traveled a lot in those days.
I don't want to hold you too much longer. I know you're a man who's very busy, even at this day and age, which I think is spectacular. So let's move into the final five, just five, shorter as long as you like to go, Jim. Just 5 questions. I know in reading about you, you don't watch TV for pleasure. You said there was once upon a time, there was only 2 movies you'd watch, Dr. Zhivago and The Godfather. Have you watched any movies since?
Oh, sure. I became a director of Paramount. As time went by, they asked me to go on the board of Paramount, which I did, and so I got to see a number of movies, of course, at Paramount movies and things, and no, I learned a lot. I was on the board for a number of years, and I certainly learned a lot about the movie business for a number of years.
So is there a movie that sticks out then that you enjoyed?
Yeah, and I've forgotten the name of it. It was to do with submarines, and I forgot the name of it now. But it was one of the Paramount movies, and boy, it was very interesting. I forgot the name of it.
Who was the actor?
I can't tell you that either.
Oh no, you're gonna leave us all hanging.
Yeah,
Now we're all
no, I
wondering.
remember there was anyway. It was interesting. I learned a lot about submarines. I remember that.
How about the first car you ever sold? What was it, and where was it?
First car I ever sold was at 7th and Burrard, 7th and Cambie and Burrard, at this gas station that Fred Richmond had, and it was a 39 Plymouth.
Do you remember any of the selling features you had for that?
No, I can remember nothing. I was the washman and I was allowed to speak to a customer because the salesman was off duty or out selling a car, and I was the only guy in the lot, and I was allowed to speak to the customer, and I sold the car. So that's all I can remember.
Did you give it a fist pump after that?
Pardon?
A fist pump.
No, I don't even do fist pumps. I didn't even know what they were in those days.
What is your favorite car?
My favorite car is at my house now. It's a 75 Pontiac convertible. And it's sitting at my house right now.
And 75, have you owned it since day one?
Yep, day one. Drive
it every year?
I drive it every year. I don't drive it every day every year, but I drive it every year. It's a convertible, and on a good day, I haven't driven it so far this year, but I'll drive it one of these days.
If you could go back to your 20-year-old self and impart one piece of advice or wisdom on, what piece of advice would you give yourself back then?
Well, be honest and tell the truth. And what's our foundation here is be honest. And
you've known that since day one, then.
Well, I was taught that from my parents by example.
Yeah.
Always tell the truth and be honest. And I've made every mistake in business, but the one I haven't made is we've been honest. As we've made mistakes, but we've never been dishonest in any way, ever, to my knowledge.
You talk a lot about getting to a mountaintop, and once you're there, the next mountaintop. You just keep going. What is the next mountaintop for yourself?
Oh, heck, there's always new ones. Every day we don't know which the next one will be, but there will be another one.
You've been around the world, and you have met, I was just walking in your lobby and looking at all the famous and historical figures you've met through your life. You've been privy to a lot of interesting conversations. If you could, is there one conversation you can go back to and be like, man, that was surreal. I can't believe I was sitting across from X and X and in the same room.
Yeah, the answer is Ronald Reagan and Gorbachev.
And what was being talked about?
Well, they were just talking, and I was included. And here was, if you go back, the history, of course, was the Berlin Wall when the war was on, and Ronald Reagan went to there and said, Mr. Gorbachev, well, this when I say the World War was on, there was the war between, if you like, Russia and America, the Cold War. And Ronald Reagan went to the Berlin Wall, said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And I had the opportunity of meeting Mr. Gorbachev with Ronald Reagan and with the piece of the wall. I'll show it to you the picture here afterwards. And that's probably one of the highlights of my life.
Well, I really do appreciate you sitting down and taking the time to meet with a small kid from the country. This has been just pure enjoyment for me.
Well, anybody from Saskatchewan is always more than welcome around here.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hey, folks, thanks again for joining us today. If you just stumble on the show and like what you hear, please click subscribe. Remember, every Monday and Wednesday, a new guest will be sitting down to share their story. The Sean Newman Podcast is available for free on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever else you find your podcast fix. Until next time.